Anxiety isn't just fear, it's a message your life is trying to send you. Since 2005, I've worked with 198 clients experiencing moderate to severe anxiety. 63 of them at the most severe end of the spectrum. Their stories have challenged much of what I once believed about anxiety, and I want to share what I've discovered. I'm Dr. Tony Weston, psychotherapist, executive coach, award-winning researcher, and creator of the Lifelong Capacities Map. What sets my approach apart is this. Because I'm both a therapist and a researcher, I don't just track symptoms, I track transformation. I listen for what's really going on here. Why is this difficulty surfacing now? And most importantly, what actually helped you grow? This lens is called single case efficacy research. It doesn't blur out the individual, it zooms in. It reveals the inner architecture of real change. After 2 decades of this work, I can tell you, understanding anxiety through the lens of personal development, not pathology, can shift everything. Who this video is for? This video is for high-functioning adults who still feel anxious, agitated, or emotionally flooded. If you look successful on the outside but feel overwhelmed inside, you're not alone and you're not broken. It's also for professionals, therapists, coaches, supervisors who want to go beyond symptom labels and understand what anxiety really points to. Together we'll explore 1. Why traditional lab-based therapy often misses the mark. 2. What real-life client work teaches us about deep change. 3. How the Lifelong Capacities Map helps transform anxiety into personal evolution. 1. Why lab-based research falls short. As a former lecturer in therapy research, I have a good understanding of how to research therapy and about the gap between idealized lab conditions for therapy research and reality of therapy as it is practiced in therapy rooms around the world. Most studies are designed for clean conditions, people who only have anxiety. But therapy isn't clean, it's human. Very rarely does anyone only have anxiety. Imagine testing raincoats indoors and then wondering why people still get soaked in storms. Many studies exclude the very people who fill our therapy rooms, those with trauma histories, personality adaptations, addictions or suicidal thoughts. Here's what I saw in these 198 clients. 41% had suicidal ideation, 66 presented with personality-related challenges, 44% were also depressed, more than 74% had trauma, 24% struggled with disordered eating, 26% were managing addictions, 21% were on psychiatric medication at intake. These weren't ideal lab research subjects. These were real people with complicated lives, and yet, on average, most no longer met the criteria for anxiety after 9 sessions. This tells us something powerful. When therapy honours complexity, people change. 2. What clients revealed. Here's the first big insight. Anxiety isn't a fixed thing. It's a cluster of symptoms someone once named. That label has persisted longer than is helpful. It's historically contingent, overlapping, and ultimately arbitrary. We'll use the DSM term here for clarity, but on this channel we're moving beyond outdated categories. Our approach is called PsycheVita, which means psychological vitality. PsycheVita replaces the illness lens with a developmental one. Not what's your disorder, but where are you growing and what's calling for further development. We chart this growth on a continuum from 1 to 5, not just from dysfunction to function, but towards flourishing. Through my research, I came to see that we've been chasing the wrong outcome variables. Instead of researching anxiety, we should have been researching what underlies anxiety. In our previous video, The Truth About Diagnoses No One Told You, we showed how DSM-5, with its 160 diagnoses and over 1,000 symptoms, actually boils down to 6 real factors. Anxiety sits within the internalizing factor, distress that turns inward rather than being expressed outwardly. Scientifically, it turns out what we've been calling anxiety isn't actually a thing that stands up to scientific scrutiny. It's an individual experience. Everyone's anxiety is different. It's often a mishmash of deeper, unmet needs. Emotional dysregulation, cognitive rigidity and worry, restlessness and hypervigilance, avoiding closeness and intimacy with other people, existential uncertainty. Rather than the question isn't how do I suppress anxiety, but what is my anxiety trying to say? What capacities do I need to further develop? Anxiety is a signal for development and growth, not a failing. So instead of asking, how do we eliminate anxiety, we began asking, what is this anxiety pointing toward that still needs to grow? Here's a metaphor for you. Swimming away from danger. Picture this. You're on a sinking ship. You leap into the ocean and start swimming. Not towards something, but just get away from danger. That's what many anxiety treatments offer. Relief from pain, but no direction toward growth. But escaping isn't enough. We need a map, a destination, a compass to guide the swim towards safety, connection, and self-trust. That's where the Lifelong Capacities Map comes in. 3. The Lifelong Capacities Map. The Lifelong Capacities Map offers a developmental framework for understanding human potential. It identifies 12 core capacities, each with 4 unique competencies, 48 in total. These aren't abstract traits, they're the building blocks of how we thrive. This map came from a simple observation in my clinical work. Diagnoses didn't guide me, functional difficulties did. Clients weren't struggling with disorders, they were struggling to develop the core skills that psychological thriving requires. This set me researching what is the full set of psychological skills that a human needs to thrive. This is how I created the Lifelong Capacities Map. The map integrates what psychiatric models cover and what they miss out. What drives the highest forms of leadership and top-level performance? What enables humans to stay psychologically well, continuing to develop throughout the life course, and fresh, energetic, vital in how we live? It's the first model I know of that unites healing, high performance, and human flourishing under one framework. In anxiety, 3 specific competencies often show up as underdeveloped. 2.1 Cognitive flexibility, being able to change perspective or shift mental gears to adapt thinking and see new possibilities. 4.1 Empathic attunement, the ability to perceive and respond to others' emotions. 6.3 Adaptive risk-taking, the ability to take thoughtful risks aligned with values and growth. But the beauty of the map is that it's not one size fits all. These 3 competencies are generally what people tend to struggle with who describe themselves as anxious. But everyone's experience of anxiety is different. Everyone has a unique profile. The map doesn't diagnose you, it describes your developmental path. It shows what's already working and where capacity can still grow. Here's a case study for you. Let me introduce you to Layla. She's an account executive in a busy advertising agency. She came to therapy with a diagnosis of severe anxiety, feeling trapped between the agency's competing demands from her boss to the creatives to the senior management team and their big name, big spending clients. Beneath the surface of her severe anxiety, something deeper was going on. She had low-level development in empathic attunement, competency 4.1. This wasn't her fault. Layla had grown up in a household where emotional expression was minimal. Working in an industry all about emotions was a huge culture shock. Furthermore, no one had empathized with Layla as a child, so she never learned to notice or respond to others' emotions, let alone her own. She often felt out of sync with people, unsure how to read social situations, and overwhelmed in both meetings and friendships. At the beginning of therapy, she was functioning at level 1, largely unaware of emotional cues in others. In our work together, I used my own empathic attunement to model something new. As I tuned into her emotional responses, especially in moments that unsettled her, I helped Layla begin to name and process her feelings. This relational experience supported the development of her emotional capacity and deepened her sense of self-understanding. As her inner world came into focus, another shift began. She started to question her assumptions. Many of her emotional reactions at work, especially towards colleagues or clients, were based on rigid interpretations. By gently asking questions like, "What else could this person be feeling?" or "What other story might fit here?" we expanded her cognitive flexibility, competency 2.1. She became more able to adapt her thinking, step into different perspectives, and see multiple possibilities in social dynamics. That new flexibility led naturally to adaptive risk-taking, competency 6.3. Layla began experimenting with new behaviours at work. For example, when confused by her boss's feedback, she didn't retreat into anxiety. She dared to ask for clarification. As her confidence grew, she initiated more honest conversations about client needs, team misunderstandings, and the agency's internal communication style. This courage to engage meaningfully allowed her to better perceive what others were feeling beneath their words. She no longer relied solely on guesswork. Instead, she developed a more accurate, emotionally attuned understanding of others, clients included, and took thoughtful interpersonal risks in response. As these skills consolidated, something unexpected emerged: emotional contagion management, competency 5.3. Layla began to project calm, not because she was pretending, but because she had become calm. Rather than absorbing chaos from the agency or from anxious clients, she became a steadying presence. One moment captured this beautifully. She described a high-stakes meeting with a major client where tensions were running high. At one point, she paused the discussion and said, "Let's all calm down for a second and see if we can figure out what's really going on here, and then decide our next move in light of your competitor's new campaign." She laughed afterwards, amazed at the change, from being scared of everyone to calmly facilitating high-level discussions. Her leadership didn't come from dominance, it came from deepened connection. Outside of work too, Layla found that social situations felt less threatening. Instead of scanning for danger, she began to reach for connection, and with that, her confidence began to bloom. Layla's transformation wasn't about reducing symptoms, it was about building capacity, growing her ability to relate, reflect, and respond. And while AI tools can assist with insight or tracking progress, true healing happens in human relationship, through being seen, understood, and emotionally accompanied. Physical health impacts. Anxiety doesn't just affect our mind, it reshapes our body. It can increase our risks for cardiovascular disease, inflammatory disorders, immune dysfunction, metabolic conditions like insulin resistance, accelerated cellular aging, and reduced life expectancy. This is why psychological vitality matters. It's not just about mental health, it's about whole person health. When we listen to anxiety as a signal, not a defect, we have the chance to intervene before physical damage is done. In conclusion, a new way forward. This is psychiatry's flat earth moment. For too long, we've seen anxiety as just a chemical imbalance or a diagnostic label. But what if it's actually a developmental signal, a mismatch between inner capacity and outer demands? The Lifelong Capacities Map reframes what symptoms really mean, where growth is possible, how real transformation happens. On this channel, we're growing a community dedicated to vitality, growth, and transformation. You don't have to do this alone. Together, we're redefining what it means to heal and thrive. If this resonated, download your free Lifelong Capacities worksheet below. Subscribe to stay connected, share this with someone who needs it, and check the links if you're ready to go deeper, whether through my book, Transform Your Life, or by working directly with me. Your growth isn't just possible, it's the whole point. Anxiety isn't just a problem to fix, it's a signal calling us to grow. When we understand what it's really telling us, we don't just survive, we thrive. Our next breakthrough begins where anxiety speaks.